are pictures or symbols of the grave. Cave and grave, it rhymes. Cave and pits and deep places and hidden places. They're all symbols of the grave. So here this people, misguided as they are, have themselves inherited a religious philosophy from the serpent himself. And they don't worship out and open. They don't worship where they go and hide themselves in a grave where death is. And they worship the python, the snake. And that was a long time ago. And that which was is that which shall be. Revelation chapter 13. We have a beast. John says in 13 he's rising up out of the sea. In Revelation 17 he says he rises up out of a pit, a cave, the grave. And they worshiped, Revelation 13:4, and they worshiped the dragon. The Bible says in verse 12 that he's the dragon, the old serpent. And they worshiped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? You see, not only did they worship the dragon and the serpent, they still are, and they are going to in the last days. 2 Thessalonians tells us that he is God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. He exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped. He is going to be worshipped once again, even by all of these intellectual atheists and agnostics who say, oh, I don't believe in God. God cannot be proven, this and that. I'm telling you, they're not going to be atheists. They're going to believe in a God. They're going to believe that Lucifer is God. The paradigm shift is coming. Romans chapter 1, verse 21. Paul talked about this, how they changed the glory. You remember the mountain of God? Now it's the mountain of the gods. Sort of sounds like what the NIV did to Daniel chapter 2 when Nebuchadnezzar said, I see in here the fourth who is like the Son of God. The NIV says, oh, he's just a son of the gods. It's not the same. But they've changed the glory of the incorruptible God. Look at this in Romans chapter 1, verse 21. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imagination. Stop right here. Vanity, the vanity of mind. When you try to worship God in the imaginations of your own mind, it's vanity. God directs you in this Bible how to worship him. Imaginations are always linked to images. But became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. That's why they meet in caves, by the way. Their heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like unto corruptible man, and to birds, and to four-footed beasts, and, watch this now, creeping things. They've been worshiping this stuff for a long time in the past. There still are, and all of mankind who are not saved and born again will worship the serpent, the dragon, once again. That which was is that which shall be. And so when we study prophecy, when we study Bible prophecy, let's study not just what the prophets said. Let's study the old stories that are in the Scripture, Bible typology, the symbolism of David and Goliath and Samson and Noah, and all of these great stories in the Scriptures are telling us that that which was is that which shall be. We were concerned, this came across this week, we were concerned about Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin, who at one time, I don't know if she's going to run for president or not, the rising star of the Tea Party people and the conservatives and the people who want things different. And Sarah Palin being part of the Wasilla Assembly Church up in Alaska that is linked with this Joel's Army cult. And if you're not familiar with that, we could probably spend a little time on that this morning. But we have a video called The Truth Behind Joel's Army. You need to see, because you may have heard that and say, oh, Joel's Army is a good thing. No, it's not. Joel's Army represents the destruction or the destructive army the army of the consumers that is going to come in the last days. They are God's army because He's in charge of them. But they're not good guys. They're the bad guys. Joel chapter 1 and Joel chapter 2 gives you a description of this army. And you go look at it. For some reason, and I believe I know why, for some reason the description of Joel's army in Joel 1 and 2 matches exactly the description of the locust and the scorpion army that rises up out of the pit in Revelation chapter 9. That doesn't sound like the super Christians that everybody's making it out to be. So we saw that Sarah Palin was linked with that. Glenn Beck, through Mormonism, linked with that. This idea of a dominion of these ultra-conservative white Christians taking over America for the glory of God so Jesus can return. It's not going to happen that way. And now we have Rick Perry. This article, Rick Perry bases call for national salvation on Joel's army cult movement. This is from Glenn Wright, the Political Buzz Examiner. If Governor Rick Perry of Texas runs for President of the United States, he will have one of the most unusual and specific bases for his platform of any candidate in many decades, the spiritual visions of the ancient Hebrew prophet Joel. Perry has jumped on the Joel's Army bandwagon, claiming in his promotional message for the response prayer and fasting event in Houston in August, quote, "Some problems are beyond our power to solve, and according to the book of Joel chapter 2, this historic hour demands a historic response." That is a quote from Perry. The language of Joel 2, written centuries before the birth of Jesus Christ and referring to a time after the return of the Hebrews from their Babylonian exile, has been reinterpreted by some Christian groups to be a prophecy referring to the end time or apocalypse. The response Perry is talking about is the one Joel 2 calls for when God's people are confronted by an apocalyptic crisis, in part a call for fasting and prayer. It is also a description of a powerful army of God. One group which has for many years taught a theology based on Joel's 2 crisis or shock doctrine is the Kansas City prayer organization IHOP, International House of International House of Prayer, headed by Mike Bickle. Part of what was known in the 1990s as the Kansas City Prophets, a neo-charismatic movement of Christian dominionists who seek to transform the USA into a Christian theocracy. Stop right here. I've got more of this article, but stop right here. So, and this article written by someone who obviously is not related with the Christian fundamental movement, with the Christian right, probably doesn't know a whole lot about the Bible, written by that, and yet he recognizes the dominion theology of the entire Kansas City Prophets, the IHOP movement, the Joel's Army, the Todd Bentley, Mike Bickle, Bob Jones, all of these people who represent this dominion idea, including Sarah Palin. He gets it. Okay? He understands it, and I hope you do too as well. The article goes on to say, these self-proclaimed prophets often employ the militaristic rhetoric of Joel 2, look at the language here, which describes a great and destructive army of God, thus Joel's army. To fill the ranks of this army, the leaders of the movement target young people and children and shape their message with raucous, often violent themes and music intended to appeal to young people's raw emotions. The main message is one of engaging a national crisis and attacking and defeating an allegedly demonic enemy, both within the church and in the supposedly satanic secular culture. The opponents of Joel's army, in addition to competing religions such as Islam, are characterized as being pro-abortion, pro-gay rights, politically liberal enemies of God. Perry has sent out a letter to all 50 governors of the United States saying that, quote, given the trials that beset our nation and world, from the global economic downturn to natural disasters, the lingering danger of terrorism, and continued debasement of our culture, I believe it is time to convene the leaders from each of our United States in a day of prayer and fasting, like that described in the book of Joel. Perry invites all the nation's governors to this event, telling them, quote, I believe it will take a great amount of prayer and a renewed commitment to spiritual principles to get our nation back on track. Let us not delay in doing what is right for our people and our future. So, stop and think about all the people now. And I'm a conservative. I'm a political conservative. I'm a religious conservative. I'm a fiscal conservative. I think you ought to save money and not blow it all the time. Think about all the people now that just popped up running for president, or we think might run for president, like Sarah Palin, and then we have Mitt Romney, the Mormon, the guy that believes that if you do the temple ritual thing and stay with your wife, you're going to be God's. And also, by the way, Jesus, when he returns, he's going to come back to Independence, Missouri. So I need to be president so I can take over America so he can have it. That's Rick Perry. That's just another form of dominionism. Rick Perry, we have Glenn Beck, we have Sarah Palin. Now we have what's his name here? Rick Perry and Mitt Romney. We have all these people now that are the front runners running for president in this country. And for some reason, not a one of them has their theology straight. I think we need to be watching. And something that God has always helped me with is being a watchman. I think it's better to warn people that the sword is coming when the sword is a long way away, rather than waking up one day and finding that they're like right there at the gate. I think that's better. I think it gives people more time to prepare. Here's another article sent by one of our watchers, one of our followers. This is about the Borders store. Borders, the bookstore, announced that they're going out of business. Okay, here's the article. Customers of Borders flagship store in Ann Arbor mourn the loss of the nation's second largest bookstore chain Tuesday, saying the company's demise will leave a colossal hole in the community. On Monday, the 40-year-old Ann Arbor retailer decided to battle against Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, and other merchants. And while customers at the store on East Liberty Street in downtown Ann Arbor said the company was slow to adapt, they say they will miss having a brick-and-mortar place to browse for books. Customer traffic was sparse in the store Tuesday, and employees seemed subdued but greeted and helped customers find what they were looking for. The liquidation sales could begin this weekend and are expected to wrap up in September. Borders lawyers are to appear Thursday in U.S. bankruptcy court in Manhattan for a hearing on the bid to liquidate its remaining 399 stores. Now, here's what happened, and I'm going to use this story to jump into something else here about our country. Borders. I've known about Borders for years. Borders had these chain bookstores all over the place. And you can go and sip this little expensive coffee and read these books and get Wi-Fi and all this stuff at Borders. You could do that. Borders looked nice. I mean, they looked nice. They were nice stores to go into. Okay. The problem is they were running their company on borrowed money. They were acting like they were wealthy. They were acting like they had a lot of money. They were acting like things were going really, really, really well. But they were doing exactly what Circuit City did and others before them, that they looked nice. And boy, they made their stores look, beautiful and immaculate and, a high standard that we have, and selling this merchandise. The problem was not enough people were buying the merchandise, and they had borrowed too much money. And they didn't have, watch this now, they didn't have the money to pay it back. They got to a point, they kept trying in the courts, kept trying this, kept trying that, kept trying to borrow. They couldn't pay the money back. They kept trying to borrow more money because they couldn't pay the original money back. They kept borrowing more and more and more and more money. And finally they said, you know what? We can't compete. Barnes & Noble's got us, and Amazon.com, and everybody's buying Kindles and iPads, and they're reading all this stuff, and we just can't compete. So we're going to have to file for bankruptcy. We got to a point now where we can't pay our bills, and now we're going to have to sell off all of our assets. We're going to sell off all of our stores, shut them down, fire all the employees, get everybody out, and where this nice little store used to be with this coffee, it's going to be this empty space where nothing exists. It's going to be like a little wilderness in here. I want you to think about this, okay? Because this is what happens when a company, runs itself on debt and tries to borrow more money so that it can keep going and keep going and keep going. Revenue has to come from somewhere. You have to have money from somewhere to pay off the debt that you keep going. And if you can't pay that debt off, then you shouldn't go out and borrow more money to pay off the other debt, because you just never catch up. That's how it's done in the business world. If you don't achieve, if you don't push and strive